Mr. Abby.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Facts of Life with ABBILICIOUS, where the truth is being said or told the way it is. This is going to be a fantastic topic for discussion. It's going to have part 1 to 3 segments of various types of child abuse in the community. We're going to say community, which includes African community, West Indies, Saudi Arabian, and all that, all put together, because we're trying to address the issue not just for the African and West Indies community alone, but to generalize it, because we have also other viewers from other various parts of the world who are watching the program. Today I've got a fantastic, one of my guests who's going to be coming for the program for this particular topic for discussion, because under child abuse we have various types of terrible issues regarding child abuse, from sexual molestation to child soldiers. From child soldiers, we also have child slavery. We have FGM, which is the female genital mutilation, among other things that we will be discussing. I'm going to be having various guests who are going to be coming to the program to also talk about every single issues pertaining to this particular topic. And today I've got a fantastic guest, a beautiful lady, a very good friend of mine. She is an award-winning women's rights activist, and she's also from Sierra Leone. She is also a fantastic advocate for FGM, and she is going to be, speaking, introducing herself a little bit for you guys, and we are going to be talking about the discussion. And also, for those of you who would like to ask questions, you can either type it on the live stream on the comment box, or you can phone us. The phone number is there. But it is going to be a very interesting topic I'm going to show you for discussion for the next 3 weeks, because we are going to be having different beautiful people with a lot of with the organization coming in to talk in the program. Now I'm going to turn to you, my darling Alimati. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience, to let them know what you do, who you are, and what drove you to this, and part of the issues why you're passionate and selfless about what you do.
Well, Abby, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's a privilege to be here with Heritage TV. And good evening to our audiences watching, and thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come and listen to the program. Hopefully, I think we can bring across to the community some of the concerns they may have, and how best we can address those issues with our expertise and with sort of the work we do with communities on the ground. So obviously my name is Alimatu Monikeni, and I am an anti-FGM campaigner and an advocate for women's rights and children's rights. So I have been doing this work for quite a bit. Previous to that, I worked in local authority and worked in the civil service. I've done quite a lot whereby I've had access to communities. So in some ways, this is sort of an incomposite work that I bring to the discussion. So firsthand, being on the ground, working directly with communities, knowing what some of the concerns they have and how best we can address the issue. And obviously in the past few months, a lot of community leaders, community activists in fact, and other people are concerned about some of the issues that they're sort of listening or reading in the press, in the media. What can we do as communities? So it's sort of, I was happy when you said, let's come and talk about these things so we can address this issue and how best we can help our community. Because I think the communities that reach out to us, we should always be ready and available to them, because that's the only way we can address these very pertinent issues, from gangs to sexual molestation to sexual exploitation of young people online. And so this is a platform, and we hope people are going to tune in tonight. And feel free, it's a safe space. If you think you're concerned with some of the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, obviously do not share that information on the platform. You can always reach Abby at Heritage TV. My information will be at the end of the program, and by all means feel free to reach out to myself And if we do have young people and you think you're worried, we will give out some information that would help those concerning young people and how they can get help. There's lots of help available, and we'll try and put that up for them as soon as we can. But I'm happy to be here, and I hope it's going to be an interactive session, and we will do the best we can to address some of the issues.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that little bit of introduction about yourself. Now, I want to ask you, with the anti-female genital mutilation that you actually campaign a lot about, is it how did you come about it? How did you manage to decide this was the thing that you wanted to do? To sort of like be a selfless human rights activist, women's rights activist, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, obviously for me, FGM is a personal issue. It's something that happened to me when I was quite a young person.
Okay.
But I was privileged because in my time, since sort of gaining access to information that was to help me, I had lots of people, from medical practitioners or professionals to people working in social services. There was information available to myself. So in some ways, I became involved with the main campaign itself as it is now, the End FGM campaign, sort of the global campaign itself and the campaign that's running in the UK. In 2012, I decided to go back and search for a woman who sort of has been there for me, but I couldn't reach out to her. Obviously, we're all busy. I'm a parent, I have children, I have a busy working schedule, and I've never reached out to this woman. So finally, I made up my mind and said, I must go and say thank you, because in those times when I had lots of challenges. Delivering my babies was a challenge, and many other issues. And obviously, this is something nobody wants to talk about. It's very personal, and it sort of cages you. You're sort of stuck in one place. So I thought, well, this is not good. We have to do a lot more for women. So I went in search, because I thought there was a lot I could do. And obviously, I'd graduated at that time, and my studies included gender relations and how we sort of advocate for women's rights, particularly young girls. So fortunately for me, I was able to find this woman, and she was still doing the same job. And I thought, wow, this is over 20 years, and this woman is still doing the same thing, going into communities and talking with women. And I felt I needed to do the same, because I just felt we owe it to other women and girls like myself to educate them about the risks associated with female genital mutilation and the challenges that can be for some women to access services. How do they even explain what has happened to them? And a lot of women don't know that this has happened to them. There are certain women from certain communities where this is done to them as young children, young babies. And so growing up and becoming an adult woman, they have no idea, unless when they turn up at maternity services and maybe a poor midwife is trying to deliver a baby and says, oops, I can't, because she's been subjected to FGM. So I feel there has to be a very sensitive way we can approach the subject with women, because in my case, I had a sort of a very good experience from a doctor who knew what to say to myself, to a midwife who knew exactly what to do. And I've just surrounded myself with people who knew what this was and how best they were to support myself. In my case, I just couldn't put the two together. It was just something harrowing for me to sort of connect with. And I didn't see where I belong in this entire cultural thing. Some people say I don't like using that word because this is not cultural. This is a practice, obviously, that's existed in our society for many, many years. But I felt I needed to do something. I was in sort of a position where I could, because I knew what to say and how to speak on women's behalf for those that couldn't say it. And so I set out on a journey, and I don't regret setting up this path. But in 2014, I decided to sort of set up an organization, because again, these concerns lie in my community, and it's greater than most women. And I felt the only way we could sort of reach out to these women is to find a place where I could represent their voice. They don't always have to come and reach me or be with me, but I could represent them through Project ACE. And Project ACE simply stands for, it's a project. We're always running around, finding people, making sure that they're meeting the needs of these women. that they're accessing services, that they know exactly what they should be telling their doctor when they present at their doctor's surgery. So it's a project nonetheless. And so we act on what we say we're going to do. A lot of the times, a lot of these women are promised services that are never there, or you turn up somewhere where you've read a sign to say this is what we offer, and the women turn up at these services or agencies and nothing is there for them. So there's nothing representative of these women's needs or their concerns. So we tend to act on their behalf and be their advocate or their voice, using sort of the work from domestic violence, where you have the Mackenzie or the friend of a woman who's presenting the domestic violence in the court, and how best to support those women. And so we're committed. This is not something I think I'm going to be in for just one day. It's a lifetime commitment. I pledge myself that I will do the best I can to represent women and women's needs and concerns. And and then the I, because it's an interaction, we have to constantly be interacting with our communities, letting them know that this is something that's very bad for women's health and women's well-being, and that it has to end. And so we continuously interact with those women, and so which is why the pronunciation is Project ACE, but the I at the end is about interacting.
Fantastic. I think you've actually made me realize that this is not just because you said it was a personal thing that happened to you as well. And one of the things is that sometimes I think when a person, an individual rather, decides to go into this kind of being an activist, or being an advocate for a particular cause, is to do with, once it's always about the personal experience, and that helps you as a person to be able to also help others as well. Because when you look at your experience, it helps you to heal, to understand that if another person is going through it, you're able to help that person. Now, what I find quite intriguing is the fact that you became an award winner, you won an award for the work you're doing. And I would like to know, how did that come about, and basically to talk about, so that you encourage other people out there to understand that when you're doing things to help the community, especially vulnerable people in the society, like the children, because like I said, it's going to be a part 1 to 3 segment, so we will be having the other guests. They're going to be coming in as well. So and each person is going to talk about a particular subject pertaining to the topic for discussion on the child abuse. So I wanted you to tell us more how that came about, and and how much you've actually been able to, what the challenges you've had in Sierra Leone, because and also here as well, to be able to get your voice heard, because I know FGM is something that is so, it's not just in Sierra Leone, it happens in Nigeria, it happens across the world, especially in Muslim countries, as well in Arab and all that stuff. So surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't know this. And it is quite irony to know that, we've met a couple of, we did go to a couple of events, especially in House of Commons, to talk about, I think myself and you were also a chair at, what's her name's, was it Brita Fig?
That's right.
So we both discussed, because on my part of being a human rights activist, I had to basically talk about these issues as well. So I wanted to know how yours came about, really, the award, and
of course,
were you part of, did you go into the jungle, how did it come about, and how were you, the challenges you faced?
Oh, good. I mean, first thing first, you do not have to have had the experience to advocate for women. Exactly. In my case, a lot of the people that actually stood for me and made it possible for me to even be here were women who haven't had the experience of FGM. In my case, some of the awards, I mean, the most recent one was being recognized as of 175 African people who was prominent in terms of how they affect change. In terms of dealing with FGM, obviously it's a very deep, for some people, it's an area that a lot of people wouldn't understand if you try and explain it to them. I think we have a caller coming in, so if I will take a break in.
Okay. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Hello. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. What would you like to
I
share?
was just watching the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alima is on it. Alima is a very friend of mine. She's more than friend. She's kind of like a sister. We campaign together, so I'm so proud of her. She's on the show.
Oh, thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for joining in. Well, this is the incredible part of the work we do. You say the challenges.
Yes.
It's very difficult for me to see challenges. Of course, yes, the work I do is unfunded. A lot of the time is my money that I use and my time. And because I believe in sincerity and I believe in passion, and when you have a passion, you don't wait for things to come along for you to do it. Obviously, it's tiring, and as you can see, we're here 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening. But this is the best time for us to reach out to our community. And I think often we have to do the best we can to help our women and our girls, because many times in our community, and again, a point of correction, FGM does not happen just in the Muslim community. I'm a Christian, and FGM happens in Christian. In fact, it's cut across community.
I think I would not. The reason why I said that wasn't to stereotype, but it was more to because I've had a lady who she's doing a lot of work in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, and she will be coming to the program for in a while. She's actually with the United Nations, and she's a very good friend of mine. I met her at an event as well, the human rights event work that I do, and I know that one of the things that the issues that she brought to my attention, because I didn't even realize, I thought it was only just in the African community that we do have this, but then she then let me know that it's happening a lot. And what they do is, unfortunately, I think is to do with the fact that so that the girls don't mess around with the Somali community as well, and she said it was more of I think she herself was just trying to mention that in their community, because Afghanistan is Muslim, less than more than Christian, even if they're Christians there. Oh, okay.
So we have another call.
We are having callers today.
It's a good thing. We want people to call. If you have any questions, phone,
please share,
text, and
exactly. Also share the program. Let other people watch it, because I know there's a lot of people who have this kind of problem, and they are able to speak to an expert. I mean, to be able to tell them what to do. Our own experience as well, she's able to talk about that here, and also for you to be able to speak up and let us know what the situation is. Hopefully we'll hear about that.
Okay. Well, just to give our audience just a guide of what this is. So first of all, what is female FGM? FGM basically stands for female genital mutilation, and the United Nations definition of it's any procedure done to the female genitalia, either through injury or where it's been changed or altered for non-medical reason, is deemed as FGM. Yeah. So there are 4 types of FGM. All 4 are harmful to the woman and their health, and leave a woman with lifelong consequences and extensive complications. It depends. And in some women, they don't.
Is it that they tight in the genital area, or what happens?
That's just one type of FGM.
So the one that they cut the clitoris. Because in Nigeria and some other parts of West African countries, I am aware of. There's some parts in Nigeria where they cut the clitoris so that the lady doesn't become promiscuous, where she will then be sleeping around. But and that the thing was a woman who, or girl whose thing, would not really be prone to having sexual intercourse consistently, would not like sex.
Sure. Well, to help our audience, because we don't want to leave our women very scared for knowing what this is. Obviously, from the 4 types, the first one, if we use the WHO, or the World Health Organization definition, type 1, which is a clitoridectomy, which is what you're mentioning, and it's not just in Nigeria, where sometimes, not always, where the woman's clitoris, obviously this is the watershed moment, it's pricked or sometimes cut or taken parts of it. There are many things that can be done to it. That falls within the category of type 1. Now, there are many sort of explanations around that, obviously, because of our time. I'll try and limit the sort of the definition.
Oh no, please.
Yeah.
Feel free to let people know
what.
what.
The removal of the clitoris. I mean, in some communities, not always the case that it's in regards to women's promiscuity or sexuality, but it's to control women's sexuality. Obviously, yes, any prick, any sort of touch to that area, obviously it's very sensitive.
Yes.
So it would have an adverse effect on a woman's health in terms of sensuality around that area, the sensitivity around that area.
Because I heard some women have a big one.
I mean,
you know,
it's a
that some, you know, so that when they do sit down, they get a little tickly. And they will
again,
just
these are myths. These are all myths.
Okay.
Again, which is what we need to talk to our community about. A lot of the time, the conversation we have around the use of the clitoris is based on myth. In some communities, a woman will be told, if you are having a sexual intercourse and the clitoris, for example, touches the penis, the man will go sort of immobile. Let's use that word for now, for comedy's sake. You know, it's not going to happen. And some people would say, for example, we have to remove the clitoris because it would hinder a child or make a woman infertile. The reasons are endless, so we're not going to bore ourselves with the reasons. All we would like to say, for the mere fact that that organ of a woman, it's a healthy organ, it's functional, it has a purpose, and by removing it in itself leaves a woman sort of affected by it. In some cases, for some women, they're affected for the rest of their lives. So that's just part one. In part one, there are many in type one, there are many elements of the type 1 clitoris removal. Clitoridectomy is the sort of the word used for it. And type 2, which is excision, it's usually partially or totally where the lips, I would use that word so people can understand it, but there's a biological terminology for it, which are the labia majora or the labia minora. In some cases, it depends. Again, this is in fact the most common type of FGM around the world, where the lips are taken out, and some of it is partially or totally, not always. And again, both like type 1 and like type 2 leave a woman with severe consequences, obviously like scar tissues and that doesn't heal, doesn't stretch. This is an area that is quite sensitive for women, you know, that help the woman, you know, and so. And type 3, which is infibulation, which simply means the woman's, not always the case, sometimes they will take the clitoris or the lips of the vagina off, and then the skin will be pulled together and sewn, and a tiny opening is left for a woman. Obviously, you can imagine sexual intercourse, giving birth to babies, or just having a menstrual flow could be very challenging for that woman. And it leaves a woman with serious...
That is when it's been stitched up.
That's when it's been stitched up.
Is that because normally I believe that the menstrual flow comes from the main hole.
Well, again, as women, we need to know what our vaginas or our genitalia looks like. A lot of
times, I know where the pee comes from is different from
where... Yeah, that's your urethra, where your urine comes
yes.
from. And obviously you've got the vaginal opening where we have intercourse, and then the lips of the vagina, which are the labias, and then you have the clitoris. A lot of the time, when we go into communities, a woman will tell you, actually, I don't know what the name of my vagina is, or what the bits of my vagina are. And you have to educate women, again, because these have been subjects that we are not allowed to talk about. In some conservative communities, we don't talk about sex, or what our organs look like. So it's about educating women about their bodies.
Especially female children.
Especially our female children. In fact, the NSPCC had a campaign some years ago, I think a year and a half ago.
NSPCC stands for?
It's a National Society for the Protection of Children.
Yes.
So they had a campaign running called PANTS. Basically, it's allowing parents in particular, guardians or custodians of children, to begin to talk with our children by naming our organs, their real names. In some community, I don't know about Nigeria, but in Sierra Leone we have so many names for our vagina.
Oh yeah, the same thing is also in Nigeria as well.
Children are facing exploitation or sexual molestation, and somebody is abusing that child. They usually would have a very fancy name that the child would not be able to describe it if they're wanting to report that abuse is taking place. So for us, it's bringing a safe discussion about our bodies, our well-being, what is important, what is relevant, what is active, what is what is this? So we have to educate our community, particularly our women, in an area where we start from even breasts. Some women don't know, how do we examine ourselves for breast cancer?
Exactly, which
how
is true.
do we tell the nurse when we go for our smear test
Yes.
what should be done to us? Or if you have irregular periods, how do we begin to explain some things? So the discussion around FGM centers around the health of a woman, not just around the practice itself that sometimes some people get consumed with, or their cultural relations to this practice. For us, it's about the women's well-being, from their mental well-being, because, for example, FGM is child abuse. The way FGM is done to a lot of women, it's, for me, deemed torture. It's extreme violence.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's extreme violence, and you are removing a part of a woman's body that is for
And to think from a child's, from a female, a girl, from a little girl being subjected to that much torture at a younger age by having a genital removed and cut off, or being mutated for to keep her away from men.
yeah.
And not realizing it will affect her in the near is quite a terrible situation.
Well, in some communities, to be fair to our community, in most cases where this is done, it's not done to hurt the girl. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
done to
it's
cause pain.
yes.
It's done out of love.
Love,
I mean,
exactly,
making a
yes.
girl marriageable for life, and making
Exactly.
sure they fall within. Obviously, a lot of the time, this issue of female in some communities, in fact, we don't. I'm just using this because I'm talking on a platform like this. If I were with a community and I'm sitting with the women in their front room or in a cafe somewhere, I don't use the word mutilation. I would use whatever word that woman feels comfortable with. Some people will call it circumcision, some people will call
Exactly.
it sunnah, some people will call it katna, some people have various names for it. So whatever, because again, we do not want to
Yeah,
stigmatize.
because I think the reason why it's been named that is because of the excessiveness of what the way the children, female children, have been subjected to it.
Right,
It's
yes.
really basically, it's like circumcising a young child, a young boy. You know, where you have the Jew, you have Christians, you know, Africans do it. We believe in circumcision of a boy. Once a little baby is being born and it's a boy, they automatically get circumcised. But for the female, this is another thing I wanted to ask you. What makes a difference from, you know, a female circumcision to a boy circumcision? Why is there a difference? Why is it more controversial? Why is it now more being looked at as an abuse for a girl to be circumcised?
Well, in terms of the narrative, first of all, the word circumcision, in terms of the biological context it's done, are two different things for a boy and a girl.
Okay.
In my case, in my personal opinion, I sort of am against harming. Do no harm, period. Don't touch the boy's genitalia, do not touch the girl's genitalia. Some people will argue, which I have no control over, if I wish I could stop it all. And some people argue it's in their religion.
Yeah,
But
it's
for
in
the
religion,
girl,
yeah.
for the girl, in terms
Because
of...
I find, sorry to cut you short, I find that also some people, some communities hide under the religion. That was one of the reasons why I did say that some Muslim countries, they believe it is part of the religion to circumcise both the female child and the male child. And telling them they shouldn't do it is like, you know, you're challenging their faith, or you're under. I mean, what's what I'm looking for? You're disrespecting their religion and stuff. Because although this is going to be another topic for another day, I'm going to talk about left hand as well, and the controversy about, you know, the way left-handed as well is people is being treated. Because I'm left-handed, and I do get quite a lot of abuse. I was, you know, emotionally and stuff. This is another topic for another day. And some people claim, you know, it's a religious thing, which I say there's nothing like that in the Bible. Please show it to me where it says that both hands are, I mean, left hand is bad. But like we have on August 13th, left-handed day. So what I'm going with this is, under the religion aspect, people do argue about it. They will say that, you know, this is something that, you know, is a modern thing.
Well, in terms of religion, when it comes to FGM, there are no sort of religious connotation to it. There's no, in all the texts, Quran, the Bible, the Torah, where FGM has been said to be done. Just today, in fact, or yesterday, we have a massive Muslim community in America, an imam, a collection of imams who have spoken out against this practice. Within the religions, Christianity, Islam, there is a condemnation about this practice because it's not in there. In terms of circumcision, if I were to use a narrative, obviously because of our time and our audience, for them to understand, because this is very complex when you start to explain it
Exactly.
to our community.
Yes,
but
obviously.
I use a narrative, I use an analogy of the banana and a strawberry. Now we have a banana. If we were to peel the banana, which is representative of the penis, which is the banana inside, once a peel, which is what the circumcision that is done to men, the banana stays intact. There is still a fruit inside with all its nutrients. But if you were to try and peel, say, for example, a strawberry, you're basically going to damage most of that strawberry before you get to actually the fruit itself. Not to say one is sort of, because the two are not one and the same.
Because I believe it's the foreskin, isn't it? They're removing this foreskin to let the mushroom cap of, of the penis to come out. Yeah.
But just the other day, I mean, to be fair, they're two different things.
Okay.
We can try and explain it here and there, but they're two different things.
The reason why I ask this is because you do get this kind of argument from time to time.
True.
Where people say, well, you know, then why don't you ban male circumcision as well? And, you know, really, it is in the Bible, it is in the Quran that, you know, circumcision for men is very vital. I mean, for young boys as well, because we're talking about child abuse.
I would argue, for example, it's in the Bible that if our eye causes us to sin, to take it out. But do we take our eyes out?
No. And yeah, well, that's what your hand actually causes you to sin, you cut
it off.
Yeah.
So again, in terms of talking with communities, in terms of these subjects, these are two separate subjects, but obviously for me, as an activist on these issues, it's about the notion of do no harm. We have to enforce that a child's body is integral to them, and it's vital that they are intact with nothing removed, because that's where do we draw the line? What is acceptable in our community? What is the norm? Because these are social norms that have sort of dictated how a life of a woman, for example, or a young girl has to live. When you look at FGM, child marriage, child and early marriage, forced marriage, domestic violence, breast ironing, the list goes on and on. And each of these practices, communities will tell you, well, we're doing it because of these reasons. And they will give you justified reasons as if it's acceptable, but it's not. At the end of the day, these are practices that we have sort of conjure up. We can change them. We can keep what is good within our community.
Should we just say part of, you know, this situation is to do with a lot of ignorance?
It is, and most of the time, but again,
society.
Sometimes, but again, you have very highly intelligent, highly educated, rich, prosperous, I mean, the extent to which you can give them good, it's beyond our understanding. It cuts across background, cultural identity. The list is endless. Everybody, you'll be surprised. Even rich women can afford £3,000, £4,000. If I need to tighten up my vagina by tomorrow lunchtime, I could have it done in Harley Street. So a lot of the arguments as activists and campaigners, there's so many of them. We're so many now.
Why can't loose vaginas be tightened and stuff?
Exactly. I mean, the human body, it's complex in itself. It's there for a reason. It has to be in that format. Why change or alter it? So we advocate not to do anything to our bodies. We want our bodies to be sort of in the place where it's meant to be. Because once we begin to allow certain behaviors, then we then find ourselves in positions where we're not able to control. Because in that case, then I can alter my body to the way I want it to look.
Exactly.
Like. And the list is endless. I could say I want hoofs on my feet. I don't want my normal feet that I have because I want to have hoofs. And nobody can stop me. But these practices are now becoming extreme. In certain communities, you wonder what is left when you imagine what has been done to a girl child. I mean, it's appalling, appalling suffering that you see. A lot of women, you just have to go into some of these communities, or even in some countries around the world, and see how women are struggling to deliver a baby. In 2017, no woman should die delivering a child or giving birth to life. But we have a lot of women, because of complications, not always associated to FGM, cannot deliver normally. And if they try to deliver, they could either suffer extensive bleeding, tearing of the body, you know, because the scar has not healed properly. Or you have some women with sexual dysfunction, cannot perform or enjoy the pleasure of sex. And so there's so many of these complications. And each day we're arguing with the health practitioners and professionals to look at ways we can help women. Not to say most women who have had FGM, like myself, would have these sort of endless pain, but it's about educating ourselves and seeing what is best for us or for the health of the woman. Because again, we have women suffering from things like mental health, severe mental health.
Because of this
Because
issue.
of FGM, depression, post-traumatic distress disorder. A lot of women have been diagnosed with that. Because again, these are childhood traumas. A lot of the women who I have worked with or had the opportunity to work with, including myself, our issue was beyond us, and so it has affected our mental health. And so we needed constant help. I mean, having counseling, getting the right medication. There is endless. I mean, from women who suffer infertility, how do you begin the journey of explaining to a woman that the reason why she's infertile was because a group of people got together and said FGM was alright for her, without understanding what this would mean for her in her life and what it would mean for her in her body, that she can no longer now, as a result of blood clots from her bleeding or infection from the needles or the blades that were used, has left her infertile. It's a challenge for a lot of women, for you to tell them that as a result of their FGM, they have contracted HIV or AIDS even, or syphilis, or hepatitis, or some other diseases, which does happen. You have women with fractures on their hips because they had to be pulled apart, you know, their legs were open. Or women will tell you, in fact, for us as practitioners...
We're talking about women, we're more talking about the children, the girls.
Yes, yes.
So are they more of like the young girls? From when does this normally happen? When they're, from how old do they normally do this practice on the girls?
In some communities, I mean, the average age, this is just on policy side of things, the average age for when FGM tends to occur is from age 0 to 14. I mean, according to the UNICEF, the United Nations Organization for Children and Family, basically. And I'm glad you have somebody from that area.
Oh yes, she's going to be...
Because they have carried out extensive
UNICEF,
reports around the world on FGM, and I think for me,
and she, sorry to call you short, and she also did mention to me that, you know, she's also doing a lot with the FGM issue, and basically we're trying to make sure that, you know, a lot of various child abuses, different, you know, various kind of, like, you know, we're talking about the FGM today, and we're gonna, next week we're gonna talk about the child soldier, we're gonna talk about child slavery. So we do want to make sure that people are aware that there is a lot of existence of these issues, and how to help the community, how to make people, because I keep saying this, yes, the people are aware of what's going on, we're educating people, but also acceptance is very important.
Of course. Which is why it's so important for us to tell the community. For example, the issue of safeguarding of our children. I'm glad you asked about children. Given that FGM in most communities done to children under the age of 15, where we have a high number of children living with the consequences of FGM around the world. In terms of global, there are 200 million women living with FGM, and in terms of children, there are 3 million children under the age of 18 at risk of FGM every year alone. So when you look at safeguarding, for example, if we talk about what is FGM and how that sort of pans out in the case of safeguarding, when you look at where was parent when FGM occurred. So in terms of social services, safeguarding and child protection, it comes under neglect. Because the parent, you are responsible.
So are you telling me that it's still very much practiced?
It is practiced.
Now,
It's still practiced in the community.
UK, in the Western world, more than now, because I know that there was a law that came out recently in Nigeria banning it.
That's right.
And I know that you campaigned a lot about that with what's this other lady's name who also was doing FGM. Her name is gone off my brain a little bit, but she campaigned a lot about the one in Nigeria, and I know that you also did a lot for Sierra Leone. So I need to how did that come about? Were you able to go with her to Nigeria? How
I think you mean Comfort. Comfort Momo.
Yeah, Comfort Momo, yes.
Is a renowned, for me, she's like an angel.
Yes.
Comfort Momo was this renowned midwife that helped me deliver my first baby.
Oh, fantastic. I remember we were on the panel with
So for her,
the House of Commons.
Yes, and she set up the first African Well Woman Clinic at Sick Guys just down the road from here. And again, it's on the basis, she would be the best person to speak about this. But this is a place where I often go for treatment and support because I couldn't go anywhere where people don't understand what this means for me. So the African Well Women's Clinic, just by the name itself, was catering to a lot of African women. But within years, it opened its door to more women from all over the world, from all sort of work and background and experiences. So yes, again, back to my sort of statement I was trying to make around child protection and safeguarding. So obviously, the issue, if a parent is not aware that their child is at FGM, it's deemed as neglect. And because the way FGM is done, the part where FGM occurs is the genitalia, the girl's vagina. That's sexual abuse, so that's physical abuse, and emotional abuse, because in a lot of communities, unfortunately, because the idea of FGM is sold as this something that's very needed for that young lady or the young girl, it's done within a loving atmosphere. It falls within the boundaries of coerciveness or grooming. This is allowed grooming. I make promises that I will buy you the right lapa, or will give you toys and jewelry. It will make big party for you, and you'll have.
Some actually do that as a ceremony when the lady has been,
Yeah. So again, these are emotional. It's emotional blackmail. Is making somebody think that this is something that's good for them when it actually is not. And it's using culture to reinforce that view, using tradition to reinforce that view, when actually it's abuse of the person. And in a lot of cases when it's children, there is no consent even, forget consent. Because again, with adult women, this is something they're going to live with for the rest of their lives. It's important that the children are not part of this. So around safeguarding, the law you mentioned in 2015 is a Serious Crime Act, which has extended again further into the area of what this is in terms of criminality. So for us as advocates, is letting families know there is now an inclusion in this legislation that says you are now responsible for the well-being of your child. So you ask, is it still happening? FGM is still happening, in fact, very much so. What we don't know, and obviously we haven't yet sort of seen that, because obviously if we were to see, which I plead not to see, is a child with FGM, but not to say in 2016 the National Health Service and the Public Health England carried out data, so every 6 months or quarterly, data information from health practitioners is supplied to the NHS Public Health England, and that information is collected, and they came up with this data where they were close to about, I think it is about 18 children under the age of 18 who had presented to NHS with FGM. So there's sort of, some argue that a lot of this has happened overseas or historical, hasn't happened in the UK, but I know it's just a matter of time, and I don't want to know or see a young girl present with FGM, because can you imagine the life of that girl? So this is why we want
Yes.
to work extensively. There's lots of information which I've brought in today. For example, this for me is sort of the catalyst. I hope the audience will see it involved the Conservative, the Labour and Liberal Democrat,
Wow.
even the Green Party, all major political parties in the UK. And obviously a lot of the campaigners that you mentioned come for, there are other campaigners. And today I want to sort of honor those women who have pledged. This is for some of them it's their life, going around everywhere, in communities
Just
24/7, putting information out in the community and raising awareness in our community, from Hackney to Enfield where I live. All over the place. We're reaching out women that we've never reached out before and saying, listen, there is a lot we could do in helping women not to subject themselves or their children or their girl child to FGM. We can work around the concerns you may have. Even if you want us to speak to your family overseas, which is a lot of the work I do also, is educating my community. So far, I've been really proud of my Sierra Leonean community. It's not an easy subject to talk about. Because
It's not even in Nigerian community. It's not. I find that in other African countries as well, Ghana community, they don't talk about things, and one
it's
of
very
the reasons
difficult
is
to
very
talk about. And obviously, we have to be very careful how we talk about these issues. The language we use, we do not want to stigmatize. At the end of the day, we need to work with our community, so we don't use language that's very demeaning. We don't use images where young girls are shown, their genitalia are shown in bloody sort of pictures, as we had before. And as activists, all of us, a lot of the activists you hear about today, we also challenge authorities. We challenge the police. If we think they're doing the wrong thing by targeting community, we will challenge them. Because at the end of the day, as much as we want this to end, we do not want to sort of pinpoint particular community. Not so long ago, they would only speak with African families. But we now know FGM is not just happening in the African community.
Like I said earlier,
So we said it's not just the Muslim community, because we know FGM is not just happening in the Muslim community. So it's about a fair understanding of the needs of the community and reaching out to the community in ways that's very conducive and not challenging. But at the end of the day, we also want to tell our communities that FGM is a crime. It's a violence. It's the most extreme form of violence.
Like it says here.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna read it out. Like it says here that in the little booklet, which I might bring up a bit, a statement opposing a female genital mutilation.
Yes.
And it says here from the it is now a big crime in the UK.
It has been.
And I think also in America as well, in the
Yeah.
Western world, that FGM is a crime in the UK. Even if someone is taken overseas for the mutilation, one of the things.
Yeah.
Mutilation is still a crime. So even if you're doing it outside of the UK, like say for instance you feel okay, yeah, we'll take you down to Sierra Leone or Nigeria or Ghana or Congo to do it, it is still a crime.
Well, yes, since 2004, but it's in 2015, the Serious Crime Act, there is now part of that legislation which looks at extraterritorial. So in fact, it's a crime to remove a child for the purpose of FGM from the UK. It's a crime to aid, abet, for example, fund, buy the ticket and say, okay, well, I didn't cut the child or the girl, but I paid my sister to take her to, say, for example, Sierra Leone or Nigeria. And in doing that, you're complicit to the crime. So there's an area of that, and obviously the sentence or the charge, which is even greater than rape, is 14 years when it comes to
really? For this?
I mean, in terms of FGM, this was not something I sort of agree with. This is something the government did. It's the only crime.
I think it's the only way to try, and it's just like child bride.
That's right.
I think initially, what's it called again? That
honor-based violence.
Honor-based violence, and also the Asian community was very rampant about arranged marriage until they stopped. Forced marriage, and the same thing with child bride. and which is also an abuse on its own. And I know there was this law that was passed in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, pertaining to you know, banning child. But then something came up recently about an 11-year-old. I'm trying to remember what it is. The age for consent. For sexual consent was 11, and that has been actually questioned in the House of Assembly. I'm sure somebody might correct me with this, but I can't remember what it was a couple of years ago, and we all had a, you know, all the activists was like, what do you mean you're going to be giving an 11-year-old child a consent to sexual?
Well, isn't it just Nigeria? I mean, in the UK, the legal age for marriage is 16.
Yes,
and we say in-law, who's a child, anyone under 18. So even in the UK, a lot of activists are challenging the government itself.
Yes.
That what do you define a child as, and it's someone under 18. So why we?
I think when you're 16, well, from what I know in this country, when you're 16, you're an adult. You're a semi-adult, because then you can get a job, you can do things, you know, you can. But you only, I think the drinking age was then raised up to 21. It used to be 18, but then they changed it to 21. And I think from 16, they believe you're able to, you know, you are old enough to know your right from your wrong, but you're still a teenager.
Well, if we look at the definition of a child, is anyone under the age of 18. So whether they're 16 and are able to work, they're still a child.
Exactly.
Which is why a lot of young people, I know that sometimes we use the word, but it's just a PC word when we say young adults. To be fair, they're not adult yet until they're 21 in some cases.
Exactly.
But obviously the teenagers will tell you, I feel adult.
Yes.
But in terms of marriage, and in terms of, I mean, arranged marriage is not against the law. Arranged marriage is acceptable in the law. And it's
if both parties actually
agree.
like each other,
but it's
not
when
when they don't like each other.
Exactly. Then it becomes a forced marriage.
It becomes a forced
early
marriage.
child bride, for example, we know, again, going back to the body and health, well-being of women and girls, if someone at, say, age 9 gets married, and say by 10, 11 has a child, and the body is not ready to deliver a baby, and you find in most cases if a young person or a young girl at that age is trying to deliver a child, we have lots of complications, either early maternal death, which a lot of the time happens. We have just seen in Sierra Leone a recent report conducted by the government, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, UNFPA, Population Fund in Africa, have come up with a report of 706 women, and of those 706, we have young girls between 15 and 19, about 20%, I think, if I'm right. Please, if our audience can hear us, who have died. And obviously we have a huge increase in these communities where FGM is practiced. There is most likely to be child bride, because in most cases FGM is done to make a girl marriage material. So as soon as FGM is done, in most cases where obviously we know it's done to young girls, and the next bit for that young girl is to get married. And so when they get married, obviously they have babies. And if you're married and with FGM and have a baby, there's a chance of that girl suffering things like fistula, for example.
Yes,
which could leave them with lifelong pain
and discharge.
And discharge and sort of stigma again. They're then further stigmatized because they're passing around with this condition of their fistula. So again, we have to look at the overall picture and the life of the girl and make the girl the center of the focus. What does this mean? Because at the end of the day, we have a huge increase in also the communities where FGM occurs. We tend to have, for some reason, I'm not sure why this is sort of linking, teenage pregnancy, huge rise to teenage pregnancy in areas where there's harmful traditional practices, from FGM to forced marriage to breast ironing. There is usually a pressure on the
This
community.
breast ironing you keep talking about, are you trying to tell me they sort of, what is that all about? Is it to they put the iron on the breast?
Well, again,
for
all of these practices is to subject or make the woman, is objectifying, making the woman an object. And so controlling every bit of that woman. In some communities, for example, in Cameroon or central part of Africa, for example, Cameroon, Benin, the French Benin, Ivory Coast, there is this practice where either a stone, a warm pot stone, or a wooden spatula is used to press the breasts of a woman, if a girl, not woman, a girl. If, for example, obviously girls grow breasts. It's our nature to grow our breasts.
So what does that mean?
So the breast is flattened, basically, so that you don't look voluptuous. Because if you do look voluptuous, it means the men, in most cases, are eyeing the girl.
So by flattening the breast,
it means then it would show to the outer.
But it's meant to grow, isn't it? Does that stop the growth of the breast?
It does stop the growth of the breast, but it also
Really?
causes other issues for that woman.
Are you serious?
Oh, I'm very serious. So for some women, it's obviously the disfiguring of the body itself. You see oblong, out of shape breasts. For some women, cancer. For some women, obviously different lumps. Conditions that are very, very painful for women.
So when do they do this to the children?
They do them when they're very young, when they're in puberty. A lot of the time, when the breasts are beginning, or the body, obviously when we're going through puberty, our body begins to shape and make us ready for motherhood and womanhood.
Exactly. Yes.
And so, but it's altering that is what some of the communities are trying to do, because obviously if the girl goes out in sort of her community with breasts or large boobs or large bottom, she is prone to sexual abuse.
You know, the funniest thing was there was this girl who actually went and did a surgery to enhance her boobs and her butt, and I was like, you know what? It's quite funny that, you know, when you got it, you think, God, it's too big, and then there's some people who would literally try and, you know, abuse the girl child from growing puberty, because, you know, there's some people who go early puberty. A girl just killed herself. Probably she's about in her early adulthood, and she went and enhanced her butt, you know, her butt and her breast, and she looked ridiculous. And I was like, you know, there's some people, there's some communities that, you know, would kill the girl for having such a big, and then there you have some people trying to, you know, have more and then use that to attract the men.
Well, this brings us back to the narrative of why some of us do the work we do. It's about the objectification of women. Everyday sexism. You just have to walk on the streets, and in most cases, in everyday life, society has a way of how we should look. They want us to either walk tall, sit straight, have a pointed nose, have breasts standing upright, or have eyelids that are looking left, right, center. Again, where do we draw the line?
Isn't that being hypocritical?
It's very hypocritical. It's a double
because
standard.
1 minute double standard, 1 minute you're saying that women should be, you know, at a younger age, FGM should be practiced on a girl, and then when they get to a certain age, you want them to, you know, to go out there looking like prostitutes.
Well, that's another thing. But I wouldn't use that word.
I know, but you know, like I said, the show is about taking the truth the way it is.
It is, yes. In terms of advocacy and work with women, we tend to use the word sex workers. A lot of the women do that. Again, it's understanding what women want. Now, we love our bodies, and a lot of women will tell you, I wanted to change because I wanted to please my man, or I wanted to please the demands of my community. But we are putting unnecessary demands on our young girls in particular. A lot of our young girls have to confine to the norms of society. I mean, I recently met a young woman who said to me, could you believe this? My 10-year-old saying she needs to wear bra. And I says, has she got boobs for her to wear bra? And she goes, no, because a lot of her colleagues in class are all wearing bras, and obviously she hasn't yet developed. But it's not just any kind of bra, it's a padded bra because she wants to have her boobs right up there.
Hands.
And so the mother was actually struggling. How do I take my 10-year-old into a bra shop and say I would like to buy them a bra?
But can I just say, when a situation like that is happening, and Well, because this is where child abuse also happens.
Of course.
You do find that not just in the community, in school, peer pressure.
Peer pressure, a lot of peer pressure.
You
So
know,
when
among
going
the
back to FGM,
children.
when you go back to FGM, it's basically peer pressure, where communities that say, you don't put your child yet, what are you waiting for? My son is not going to marry you. That language begins to trigger right down to the child.
Yes.
Before they're even born, before they're even conceived, and that conversation seems to be what is driving this practice, because there's so much in the community, which is why we're now speaking with our men, our brothers, our fathers, our husbands, our cousin men, female cousins. We want our men to speak out, because we now know, to be honest, it doesn't make any difference when you have FGM, because they say, oh, we want you to be a proper woman or not promiscuous. What we do know from the work we do within the UK, not so much in other parts of the world, but I now currently work in an area where this is what women are doing. And a lot of the women will tell you, did you know, from after I had my FGM, I didn't care about sex anymore, and I felt I just wasn't going to. So it meant the women could then just leave themselves for more vulnerability. So here they were told.
Vulnerability in the sense of when your clitoris is not being cut, or when your clitoris then get cut to become, you know,
well, not just
promiscuous.
that. It's no, you don't become.
Okay,
it
so you just
doesn't.
go sexless.
Yeah, well, it doesn't, because what it now means, the women is saying, well, actually, if that's how you think about me, I'm going to just go and do it anyway. So it hasn't served the purpose.
So basically, by saying that, don't do something, and then they become rebellious.
Of course, because one, you've destroyed something that they no longer value.
Okay.
Yeah, because they don't see themselves. Well, in that case, when most women, in fact, I did a work recently with a group of women, and they will tell you their bodies are community possession. That's how they see themselves. I don't know my body. A lot of the decision that's made about me is made by other people.
Community.
So in terms of
the
rebelling
family.
against the family, they say, okay, if you think you want me to be a virgin, I'm going to go make sure I have sex anyhow. And can you imagine what sex they'll be having then? Or they will say to you,
but they would not enjoy it anyway, because they have.
well, yeah, you can. I mean, even without the clitoris. I mean, again, it's educating the women. For us, it's about offering women therapy. There is sexual health support out there for women who are struggling, where FGM has taken place, and they think they can't sort of have any feelings in that area. There's many things you can do to help yourself. So again, a lot of women, despite the pain that they're suffering, they're willing to, because you have to live with this. We don't want this to be sort of, as much as it's damaging for some of our women, we want them not to let this control them. You know, take back the power is what we use. Take back the power, gain control of your body from having therapy, psychological support, where you're sitting with a counselor or a trained therapist that will give you tips that you need to stimulate, because this is a stimulation. Because the part of their body where the abuse takes place is their vaginas, it's sort of linked with a mental trauma. So they can't get away from that. So it's a process that we have to sort of demystify from the women.
Emotionally, they're already traumatized.
They're already traumatized.
Mentally, they can't cope with the situation.
Exactly. So it's
physically they
can't fathom. Because the first ever experience for a lot of these girls, and then later on in life become women, their first experience of sexual intercourse is through their FGM. Because that's the first time somebody laid hand on their vagina.
Exactly.
So if they then go now to, anytime there is any interaction in that area, it sends a trigger, and women will tell you, I have flashbacks, I cringe, I tight up, I close my legs when somebody is approaching. Because they don't, in fact, they don't even connect that that's linked with their FGM. Until when they're sitting in our chair like you're sitting now, when we're talking one-to-one, and you're asking them to give you sort of a picture of what their experience has been. And when they're explaining, and you're trying to build the puzzles up for them, So
what can I ask you this though? How have you been? You know, what are the help? What are the things you're doing to encourage and help those women or children out there who have been victims of this issue, who have been, you know, destroyed psychologically, mentally, emotionally, who have been traumatized, You know, and how are you helping them to come to terms with the situation, to get on with their lives, to avoid the pain and emotional abuse that they've suffered, you know, that has now turned them into their adulthood?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is getting to know the women, which is what I do. In most times is going into the community, meeting the women one-to-one, face-to-face, and finding out what their experience is like, and what it's been for them, and how best can I be of help. At the end of the day, it's what the woman wants that I can sort of deliver for them. I can't always just go in and just impose myself. The woman wants to have that help, and if they do want the help, obviously it's to direct them using my own experience, where I have been, who I have seen, where did I go, who did I talk with, and directing the women. So with us in Project Days, so obviously we're on social media a lot. I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, email, text, WhatsApp. Any way a woman wants to reach out to myself, as long as you come forward and say, listen, I am struggling with my FGM, this is what I'm going through, or what does this actually mean for me?
And how it's affecting the children?
And the children. So for us, I don't work with children as such, because again, it's a very complex area of work when working with children that are abused. So we would direct those children. There's specific specialist areas in the UK that works with children. I mean, there's a children FGM clinic at the UCL. But I work directly with women, because personally myself, I wouldn't want to deal with it.
Because that was something that happened to you as a child, so obviously the abuse has gone into adulthood.
Yes, but if a parent, for example, obviously if you are concerned as a parent, or anybody, or a guardian, or anyone working with a child, a girl child, and you are worried or thinking that something may along the lines of FGM is going to happen, I would suggest you phone 999 and report to the police, because that's where the first form of sort of support comes for that child. If you are not able to do so, then you go onto the non-emergency telephone line for the police, which is 101. And if you're not able to do so,
I want you to also talk about, because we're going to be rounding up very soon, I wanted you to also address the community in Africa as well, because we're talking about here in the UK. We want to talk about also how this affects them in Africa. Quickly, for you, you mentioned if there was where those in the community here, in the diaspora, could form, emergency line and stuff. So over to those in Africa, if these things are happening, how would they? Is it the government you want involved, or how pertaining? Let me just put it this way: when you were over there, how did you manage to get the government involved? Or how would, I want you to address the final thing that, this is what the situation is, and it's happening, and, not just in Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Congo, and, and all the community. So how do you then encourage this to stop, for it to stop, and then have the last word before we...
Well, what I say to communities, currently we're running a campaign in case of Sierra Leone. I'm glad you mentioned Sierra Leone. It's called a Not In My Name. And basically what that campaign is about is bringing close to 40 plus organizations together, so we can begin the dialogue of talking about FGM, what each organization is doing, how we can share that information amongst our community, not just in the diaspora, but in Sierra Leone itself. In Nigeria, a similar campaign with the help of the End FGM campaign is running in certain states in Nigeria, but as a result of Not In My Name campaign, we have colleagues from Nigeria in that campaign.
Fantastic.
And we have ways of reaching out to organizations, grassroots organizations on the ground.
Other African countries.
So for us, it's about everywhere in Africa now. Nigeria, yes, banned FGM 2 years ago, but obviously there's a lot of work around supporting young, and in fact the campaign in Nigeria has been driven by young people. Very young people, and they have all kinds of organizations. And what I say, if you're from Nigeria, the Gambia,
Gambia as well,
Kenya, I mean, I have a heavy presence of these young people on social media. You can actually contact myself and I can link you up. In the UK, they have a campaign called the Youth for Change, which works in partnership with Plan UK and the Department for International Development, again, supporting young people. In our case, we are not funded but it's been amazing what we've been able to do. From just coming together through social media and making resources available to the people on the ground, because sometimes it's a challenge. Again, it's bringing the things around messaging, for example. What sort of message, what's the words we use? Because again, we want to make sure that everything falls in place when we're discussing FGM.
Now, you've heard it. And I want you to also make sure that you're able to, you know, what your NGO is doing. I want you to have the last word pertaining to talking about what they, you know, your role and your organization and how people can contact you. I know you're on Facebook and all that stuff, but your role, that if anybody needs help, how they can be able to contact you or link with you, you know.
Well, in Project ACE, we do offer free and confidential advice and support, and it's an avenue for women and communities concerned about FGM to reach out to young girls. We have a website, www.projectacei.org. Our emails is info@projectace.org, and we are on Twitter #. You have the Twitter handle and the Project ACE. You can text. We have a text service because again, a lot of people struggle when they're talking about themselves. So I'd say if it's much better for you to write, and even write in a language for yourself, whether it's French, English, we can have it interpreted, because we know again a lot of the time when we talk about FGM, in this case I'm talking in English, but FGM occurs in the French community. How do we reach the French community? We do know it happens in the DRC, Congo Republic of Kinshasa, and Democratic Republic of Congo. So again, it's about how we reach a wide range of community, and we will try our very best. It's not always the case we can reach to you immediately, but if we can within 48 hours, we will try and address the issue that you have raised. We are not a funded organization, mind you, but we are passionate about what we do, and if we can get you into organization where there is funding available,
where people can donate,
obviously we welcome donation. And again, I think as an African person, there's often where we don't like to ask for help. We'd rather suffer in silence, and what we're saying is don't suffer in silence.
Not anymore.
Ask for help. I mean, if we can't help, we would try and find somebody who would help you. But let's come together as women and let's share our concerns, and let's make our girl child a priority for once, and listen to the voices of our young girls. They're speaking to us, but we're not hearing them.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so we need to do more. As mother, I'm a mother of 2 lovely girls, and they mean everything to me, and I wouldn't change the world for them. And it's important that we show our girls that they're more valued as well. We tend to put more emphasis on the boy child.
Yes.
But the girls are doing quite remarkable things these days, and I want.
Well, there's the saying that what a man can do, a woman can do better.
Exactly. You know, and let's educate.
Not that I'm stereotyping or trying to put the men down, but
and the boys need help.
Exactly.
For us, it's the he for she. I mean, today I would like to dedicate this program to a great man, Dr. Babatunde Osoteyenin, who was the executive director of the UNFPA, from Nigeria, who worked tirelessly for the lives of women, girls and youth, and he passed away just the other day. I want to dedicate this program to him, because for me he was a man I met last year, and he said something amazing to me, and he said, I'm so proud you're talking about FGM, and I want you to continue to do this. And unfortunately I wanted to take a picture, but he had to rush off. But he looked at me and he's like, this can only come from us. And he was so proud, and so we were all shocked to hear his passing.
Unfortunately I did not put it on my page. I've met him.
He's a great man, and I sort of sent condolences to his family, his wife and children, and it's a shock for us all. Thank you.
Now, there we have it. We have been able to, this is the part 1 of our segment for this lovely particular topic for discussion, to various types of child abuse in the community, not just in African community, West Indies community. It's a wide range of various communities, and we're trying to make sure that you, the viewers, and those out there understand that certain things are happening in the society that needs to be addressed, and we are addressing it. We're trying to create the educate people, but also there must be acceptance in helping to make sure that this issue that we do know is in existence stops. And how do we go about it? We are going to have another lovely guest or guests coming next week to address some of the the various child abuse, various types of child abuse I was speaking about. And this today we talked about the FGM and the other to do with young child marriage, marrying at a very young age, which is wrong. We're talking about children marriage. Is it child marriage?
Child
Yes.
early marriage.
Child early marriage. Sorry because I'm really tired, unfortunately. So my tongue is going funny. But having said that, we are going to have another fantastic set of people coming in. They're experienced in the field. We have somebody from UNICEF who's also coming to address certain issues as well. And I'm looking forward to you guys also our viewers, tuning into the program and, coming with us, and to make sure that we sort of encourage one another to stop this issue regarding various types of abuse, child abuse around in the community. Thank you for watching the program. It was great seeing you all. Thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. And also a big thank you to Ali Matthew for coming to the program to enlighten us about her NGO and the work she does on FGM. Have a fantastic night. Good night and God bless.
Heritage Television. Promoting African culture and heritage at its best. From talk shows that concern you to both local and international news that relates to you. From grassroots football to African children's programs. Heritage Television. We cover your social and special events like weddings, birthdays, church anniversaries and so on, and broadcast them live on our apps and online. Heritage Television, broadcasting everything about culture and heritage. Heritage Television. We've got it covered. Do download our apps on both Android, iOS, and Windows mobile platform. Heritage Television, your very own TV station.